Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the AK Experience podcast. And I am Aditya Kuppa, your host. In this podcast, I will be interviewing people with amazing stories and interesting experiences that they want to share with you, the viewers and the listeners. In today's session, I am in conversation with the great CEO, tech entrepreneur, and leader in the field of artificial intelligence. And he has served as a mentor of mine for several years. He's none other than Mr. Dave Kops. He started his journey as a young entrepreneur in the early 80s and has founded several companies since. Today, he is the CEO of Worlds, a leading AI company. In this session, he's going to share with us his exciting journey and some great advice he has for young, rising entrepreneurs looking to enter the tech industry. Finally, he has some interesting predictions to make about the future of technology in a post-COVID-19 world. Without much further ado, let's get started. Hey, Mr. Cox, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to be here as a guest on the very first episode of the AK Experience podcast. And let's begin. Why don't you give us a walkthrough of your journey and your experience, why you chose the AI, why you chose the AI field, and could you just share your journey from the start?
Yeah, so in college, I was actually, believe it or not, I was initially a business major, and I was kind of bored with business. I didn't like the classes weren't turning me on, and so I started kind of wandering around to other classes. I called it dropping in. I found classes I thought were interesting, and I would go sit in them. And one of them was industrial anthropology, which is the study of corporate culture. And that sounded fascinating to me. So I actually just started going to the class. I wasn't signed up for it, but I started going to it every week. And finally, the professor stopped me and said, "Who are you? I don't see you on my role." I said, "I'm not in this class, but I just think it's really fascinating." And we actually became really good friends. And I changed my major to anthropology, the first person to graduate from the University of North Texas with a degree in industrial anthropology.
Wow.
And I was always a geek. I was building my own boxes, computers, and things like that. So I think technology has always been a part of my life, just because I enjoy it so much. So over time, I ended up graduating with a degree in anthropology and minor in business. But my heart was really into in technology. And when I went out in the working environment, I actually started solving problems for KPMG, a large organization. I was doing consulting work for them, and I started to realize that the problem they had was something that was not being solved very well. And it was an early opportunity to explore something with AI. And this is a long time ago. This is probably 20 years ago. So it was 18 years ago or something. So it was very early in the stage of AI, and so I found some guys that we wrote some algorithms together, and way before it was cool, and we started experimenting with information. So basically, we built a system that could learn. It was a search problem they were having. KPMG had all this information, and they had a lot of consultants, but the right information never made it to the right people. So could we make a system that could dynamically deliver the right information to the right people? And so that's what we kind of started to do. We built a system with an algorithm, that started to learn from a person's behavior, like what they were interested in. And then it would automatically attract stories, other things like that, to that person. And and it had never been done before. And we were kind of looking at that going, wow, this thing really works, And so we ended up quitting my job and starting a company that did that. That's all we did. That company's called Ingenium, and we ended up selling it to Marsh McLennan a few years later. And that was the first time I sold a company. And then I started BrainSpace. And BrainSpace is a company where you and I met.
Yes.
So I'm CEO of a company called BrainSpace, and we built a AI system that was expert at human language. So it could read human language on a massive scale, some hundreds of millions of documents, and start to analyze the concepts and thoughts and ideas in every document and connect them together in a way so that it created it as a brain, or a collective intelligence. And then people would use that brain, that AI, to then find answers. So if you fed it 100 million documents about a company, it would learn about a company dynamically without any human intervention, and it would start to then you could use that brain to then find people, find things. We ended up kind of getting into the e-discovery industry where these big litigations happen. So when big lawsuits were happening, typically someone would take 200 or 300 attorneys and put them around tables and go through documents. And we built a system that could ingest all those documents sub-second and automatically start pointing to who knew what when. And it changed the whole industry. But I think I just kind of, it wasn't something I woke up, and I didn't a long time ago say I'm going to be an AI guy. I see a lot of students going into college saying I'm going to be this, and sometimes this is the right thing, but sometimes you have to let life kind of happen and let life steer you a little bit. Always try to challenge yourself with things and see where it takes you. And that's kind of my story. Is I didn't set out to do this early on. It's just kind of it just kind of happened. I kept chasing my passions and putting everything I had into it, and then just watching where it takes me.
Wow, that's really cool.
And we sold BrainSpace about 2 years ago, right after you and I had met, and started this new company, Worlds.
Wow, that is a great journey. Very inspirational. Yeah. And so over the course of your journey, what did you feel like were some of your biggest challenges that you faced? Were there ever times when you were just thinking, oh my God, AI, or oh my God, this handling a business at the top of, either last final line of defense, right? If you're the CEO, was it ever stressful, and how were you able to cope with that?
Yeah, I think it's always challenging, right? If you're an entrepreneur, especially if you're in a startup, everything you do matters. Everything. In a large company, you can make mistakes and they don't matter as much because there's so much else happening in the company that, it waters down. In a startup, everything matters, so there's a lot of stress. I think I've gotten much, much better at handling that over the years. A couple things is, for me, the biggest challenges arose when I began to doubt myself. If you choose the path of an entrepreneur, you will make mistakes. You'll hit bottom sometime, and it's only then that you kind of find out who you are, right? And if you have what it takes to be an entrepreneur. So you have to learn how to see beyond the self-doubt, and learn to trust yourself to make it happen. And so it really becomes more of a question of, do you trust yourself enough to step into the abyss of entrepreneurship without a net, or do you trust yourself to lead other people to a better place? And over the years, what I discovered is that I would have been a terrible employee. I'm not very good at going into a company and having other people tell me what to do, and then doing that whether I believe it's right or not. And I think I'm somewhat unemployable. I think that's why I start companies.
Wow.
But I think for me, that risk of an entrepreneur, that risk of a startup, is kind of oxygen for me. I actually think I wouldn't be happy without risk. To me, risk is kind of the fuel for my entrepreneurial fire, if you will. So I actually like risk. Matter of fact, if I get to a point in one of my companies where I don't feel like we're taking any risks, I see that as a bad sign. That means we're not pushing something hard enough, or we're not breaking through, or doing things that no one else has done before. My companies are really interesting because we're typically building things that have never been built before. And so there's no recipe or cookbook, right?
That makes sense, yeah.
We just have to figure it out. And I think that's what I like the most, is I don't want a recipe or a cookbook. There's no right way to do something. I like it when whatever you do is the right way. And if it doesn't work, you try something else, and you try something else until you find out what it is, right? You iterate until you reach awesome. And
makes sense.
So where most people kind of avoid risk, I actually kind of thrive in risk. I think, to me, it's a fuel for the fire. But I think to answer your question short, I think most of the challenges are the ones that are kind of occur between your ears, not the ones that occur out in the market. So if you can kind of win that battle between your ears, like not letting that voice inside your head tell you can't do it or you're not good enough. Everybody has that. Human beings are wired for survival. I mean, after thousands of years of evolution, we are actually wired for survival. Your brain is always telling you, be careful, don't do that. And you have to kind of learn how to listen to that, but not be driven by it, and just do it. And to take those chances, to take those risks.
Makes sense.
Someone told me once that they interviewed a bunch of centenarians, so people that are 100 years old, who were on their deathbed, and they asked them all the same question. It was, do you have any regrets? And the most popular answer was that I didn't take enough risks. So I don't ever want to be there. When I'm on that deathbed, I want to say that I'm used up, man. I gave it all away. I left it all on the table, man. There's nothing left.
Wow. That's a great goal to have. So as you said, like having, a risk like mindset, just kind of pushing into it without having like doubt, and kind of getting over that self-doubt and like fear of losing and things like that, you say would be, something that an entrepreneur really has to have, right? So say a young professional, or like a college student, maybe even a high school student, what qualities do you usually find in an entrepreneur, in a successful entrepreneur, in addition to like taking risks?
Yeah. When we hire people, I don't look for someone that knows all the answers. If they tell me they know all the answers, I won't hire them, because that means they don't know what they're talking about. Nobody knows all the answers, right? What I want when I hire somebody is I want to hire someone that is smart and curious, and then is more interested in helping other people than they are helping themselves. So I can give you the experience. I can give you, I can coach you on how to take more risks. I can coach you on how to be more entrepreneurial. What I can't coach people on is, are you someone that's curious? Are you someone that's always asking questions on how can I make it better? That's the kind of person we want. We want someone that, I'll give you an example. We had a guy come in as an engineer, and when we hire engineers, we actually bring them in and we show them, we give them a problem on a whiteboard, and they work it out, right? And one of the problems we gave a guy didn't have an answer. So we weren't tricking him. We actually just wanted to see how he thought. And it's funny because he couldn't figure it out in the room, and it was really frustrating to him. And you could see him the whole interview, the rest of the interview, he was just kind of trying to figure it out. And he called me back that evening and said, "Can I talk to you?" I said, "Sure." And he said, "I've been thinking about that ever since I left, and there's no answer. What you gave me doesn't have an answer." And I started laughing. I said, "You're right." And we hired him the next day, because the guy was just so curious. It just bothered him. He couldn't figure it out. And even though there wasn't an answer, he figured it out, And so I think that's the kind of person we want to hire. We have a no diva policy. So I won't hire divas, so that person that thinks they're the best and acts like they're the best, and they're more interested in excelling over other people than they are lifting other people up. I don't hire those people. I've turned down very smart people for that reason, because they think they're the smartest people and nothing else matters. I want team players. I want somebody that understands, that we're a lot more powerful when we work together effectively. We have this concept we call co-elevation. Co-elevation means we rise together, right? I want people that are committed to rising together, taking each other up to the highest point together. So I think that's kind of it for me, is passionate, curious people who are who want to help figure things out, and who are committed as much to other people as they are to themselves.
That makes sense. So as you said, someone who kind of you would prefer, or like generally even in entrepreneurship, or someone who's like a good employee, you'd say someone who is like kind of humble and not really a know-it-all, but someone who's always like open to like learning more, right?
Right. I actually kind of have a theory on experts. I don't like them. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you why I love experts. I love experts because they show me, they're the ones that know so much, they can tell you when something's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first sign I have that it is possible, is when an expert says it's not. And so I love experts for that reason. What experts do is they take knowledge that they have in the present and apply it towards the future and say, I know how this works. I know everything I know tells me that that's not possible. Experts are terrible at the future. They're expert at helping you with the present. If you want to plan your future, you don't call an expert. They're terrible at helping to predict the future. So I don't like experts.
So so as you were saying, it's very important to kind of like one of the very important skills is to kind of just be open-minded and things like that. So in addition to that, what are some other skills that you would say, young professionals can develop? Maybe some skills are innate, some skills are just like they come with how the way they're raised, the way their personality and things like that. What are some skills, be it like technical skills, or it could be entrepreneurial skills, something that young professionals can develop over time so that they can like succeed?
I think the biggest one, the thing that pops to my mind when you say that is persistent learner. And you know this, having just graduated high school and gone to college, that you didn't stop learning after you left high school. You just started, really. Now you're in college, and it's the same thing. When you graduate from college, it's not like you're done learning. No, you just started. And so for me, the most important skill that someone can learn outside of school is, how do you learn? Learning how to learn. What can you do every day? Literally every day. What habits could you create that will help you learn every day things that are important to the things that you're taking on? So how do you become a persistent learner? For me, it's setting up systems. I have news sources and that I set up. I have about 20 Google alerts on different topics. And every day I get these. I get the topics coming into me from my Google alerts, and so I have all this knowledge coming in. And I'm a voracious reader. I read 3 hours a day. It's usually an hour and a half in the morning and an hour and a half at the evening. That's when I usually read. But I think the most important skill anyone can learn is how to be a persistent learner. How do you never stop learning? Because the new world that we're stepping into, that's creating itself in front of our eyes, is one of magnificent change. And so it's not like you can go learn something and ride that for 20 years like it was back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, right? You have to constantly be learning. Even if you're an AI guy or gal, you have to learn new skills every day. So how are you doing that? That's the biggest thing. I don't think it's there's not a list of things to learn, like while we're in quarantine. It's more like, how do I perfect being a really great person? Not perfect, but how can I every day improve myself so that I can be a resource for other people? And
that makes sense.
The question I think everybody should ask themselves every day is, who am I for other people? I think you and I talked about this once. Who am I for other people? Every day. If you're about to have a conversation with someone, ask yourself before that conversation, who am I for this person? How can I help them? How can I be a stand for their greatness? What are they up to? How can I support them? If it's a team that you're on, who am I for this team? Who am I as a resource for this team? It's a question you just want to always ask yourself, who am I for other people? And that's a skill. It's a question. If you ask it, you'll come up with some very interesting answers. Your life will go in some very interesting ways. The more people you can help, the better you'll become yourself.
That makes sense. That is great advice. So talking about kind of learning new things, just being open-minded and things like that. What is your opinion on mentorship in the field of entrepreneurship, or it could be just in general? Mentors, role models, people who you can look up to, or people who you learn from. Do you support self-learning, or do you support mentorship? A little bit of both. Yeah. What is your opinion?
I'm a big believer in mentorship. people like to help. When you called me, I was in the middle of selling my company. I had a lot going on, but I was impressed by the fact that you even had the guts to call me, and so I said yes. And I think a lot of people are like that. And I spend one day every month, 4 hours every month, mentoring small companies. So I take on, I probably mentor 40 to 50 companies a year. And some of them I talk to every month. And some of them I'll give them further than that. I'll help them out, help them raise money and things like that. But, when you build several businesses, you do learn some things. And what you can offer to other people who want to be entrepreneurs, like what I know I can offer them, a lot of what I can offer them is what not to do. I've already made these mistakes. Don't do it, So I think mentorship is critical. Find someone that really you think you could learn from and ask them to mentor you. Even if they say no, just say, well, can I continue to stay connected with you? They'll say, of course, you'll say yes, right? And go ask somebody else. I think you get more out of mentoring than you'll get out of trying to learn yourself, because when you try to learn yourself, you're self-guiding. When you don't know how to do things, it's kind of like you waste a lot of time. You go down rabbit trails that don't have any food. So mentoring's critical. Yeah. I wish I had a bunch of mentors when I was a young entrepreneur. I had one, but boy, it would have saved me a lot of time.
And also, again, I want to say thank you for saying yes on that day, and then you really made a great impact on my life. And I do agree with you a lot. Mentors do make a big difference.
And it's a real privilege for me to do it. I'm glad we met.
So a little bit, kind of moving on from the entrepreneurship side of it, I wanted to kind of more focus on the present state, and also like the future. Could you tell us a little bit about this? These are kind of questions. It could be general about like the market. I'm just more talking about like the COVID-19 situation, and then this is more like what is the kind of future of tech? What has changed? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Boy, I think what's changed due to COVID-19 is everything. You hear the word unprecedented a lot, but it can't be emphasized enough that what's happening right now may never happen again, hopefully never happens again, but the entire world is aligned around a single thing. It's never happened before. And we're starting to get the answers to questions like, what happens if nobody goes to work? What happens if nobody buys products? These are questions we never thought we'd ever have to ask. And we're asking them now. And we're starting to realize that society as a whole is not designed for this. That we are not designed for this. We're not designed for this kind of disruption. And so we have to rethink society at a level we've never contemplated before. So COVID marks a tectonic shift in the history of the world. Things that were not working before COVID are really not working now. You notice that businesses that were kind of struggling before are dying right now. On the other side of that equation, new innovations that held the best promise for the future are now creating the future. So I think there's an acceleration from COVID that we never dreamed of. So the move to say electric cars is happening faster than it was before COVID. And then I think so you can kind of go down the list. There's a lot of things that are changing pre and post COVID, but I think the net of it is everything's going to accelerate. The things that were not working before really won't work now, and the things that were kind of working and really working well are going to work great. So it's going to accelerate the change that, part of it, if you look for a bright side of this thing, maybe that's the bright side, right? Is that I honestly don't think change was happening fast enough in the world. We thought we'd have flying cars and we got Facebook, so I think and planes that were built in 30 years ago on a plane, it took you the same amount of time, maybe 30 minutes faster than it does to fly to Europe. So why don't we have supersonic travel? Why don't we have things like, why is the world not changing that fast? And so in a sense, what can come from this that'll benefit the world is these changes that have needed to happen for a long time are going to happen now. And it's going to force us to rethink humanity, and to rethink business, and to rethink governance, and to rethink all of those things. So it's an opportunity, and again, you hate to go through something like this to learn these things, but it's an opportunity to truly transform the world. With all these things that we're accelerating and learning from COVID.
Makes sense. This is something kind of one of the questions that I had were actually a question that I asked you 2 years ago when I was back in high school. And I was asking you, what is going to be the future of AI? Because you are like the AI guy for me. Whenever I think AI, I think Mr. Dave Cops. And so I asked you a question: what is the future of AI in like the next 10 to 15 years? And so, what kind of post-COVID? What is your prediction now? What would you say? Is AI is going to look like coming up?
I think one of the things that's accelerating because of COVID is AI. So we're going to start to see. We're going to start to see that the way that we get ahead in the world, and the way that we start to progress to this next humanity, is by understanding how we can co-evolve with technology, particularly AI. How can we co-evolve with AI such that we don't have to work as hard? That some of the things that we do every day, the grunt work that we do every day, is now handled by machines. I think that's scary to people because some people aren't trained beyond that. So they look at AI as like the great replacer. I don't think that's the threat right now. The threat right now, what's happening right now is we're learning how to augment who we are by a closer and closer relationship with AI. So how can we radically affect our productivity and our effectiveness and maybe our humanity, our being human, by a more intimate relationship with AI? There was kind of a really cool thing that came out this weekend. I don't know if you saw it, the GPT-3. Did you see that?
No. What is that?
Basically a text analyzer that the OpenAI group came up with. And after this podcast, go look it up, GPT-3, and it's basically a technology where this is the third version. So basically, it's a system that can read text, analyze it, and then write about it. So a couple of the beta testers are friends of mine, and some of the things that they discovered were just shocking. If you go look on Twitter, you'll see some great things about it. But there's one instance where a guy put the 2 paragraphs from his website that described his business into GPT-3, and what it responded back with was, well, great. So here's the things you should do. Here's some strategies you could take. And it literally was like that kind of advice. It was shocking at how good it was. And so when you think about the future with our future with AI, there's something very interesting that's happening. And that is AI is, there's a difference between correlation and causation. Correlation is, A plus B plus C equals, D, whatever. These things happen that correlate to make this other thing happen. But causation is kind of a human characteristic that doesn't exist in AI. Like an AI can give you an answer. I think this is going to happen in the future, but it can't tell you why. The AI can't tell you what caused that. So I do think we're getting closer and closer to AIs that maybe don't have causation, but can mimic causation. And the question I'm asking people is, if it can mimic it really well, is that good enough? Like this GPT-3, it mimicked understanding. It didn't understand what it wrote. The AI did not understand what it wrote, but it sure looked like it did. So it mimicked understanding. And because, as humans, we're not snowflakes, right? We're not all crazy individual from each other. If I find 10 people like you, Aditya, if I find 100 people like you or 1,000 people like you, I can start to tell you the things that you want to buy next or things you want to do next. And because we're not snowflakes, we have patterns. And so what's happening is AI is being able to see these patterns in life and to almost magically, I'm sorry, I have a dog, magically tell us the future, So if I'm to tell you what's going to happen in the next 10 years, it's going to be, for some people, it'd be kind of scary. I do think we're going to have AIs that can mimic understanding, that can mimic causation, that can mimic, things that we thought were uniquely human. Maybe it stops at love. I don't know if we can teach AIs to love, but I think that's going to start to really change the world. When we can start to, do we have to have a 40-hour work week? Why do we have to work 40 hours a week? What if we only needed to work 20 hours a week or 25 hours a week? Because we can get so much more productivity by our interactions with AI. I think that's very possible, that we could have shorter work weeks and things like that because we were teaching AI to work with us, not against us or at us. So I do think you're going to see that. You're going to see AIs start to, they may take away some jobs, but I promise you, they're not just going to take away jobs. They're going to create many, many more jobs. So I don't think we're going to see a job crisis. There will be a trough. I'll call it the trough of disillusionment, right? Because a lot of jobs are going to disappear. But that's a short-lived thing. On the other end of that trough is going to be lots of innovation, lots of new jobs, lots of opportunities. And so we just have to get through the painful part, which is going to be, what happens in the next, call it 7 to 10 years. It's going to be a little painful. If you're a student, it would be wise for you to understand AI and to understand how to work with AI. Take some courses on just, it doesn't have to be coding AI, but how do you work with an AI? So I think that's going to be really important. Outside of that, look at our biology, right? So I do think we're going to get to human beings version 2.0.
Wow.
We're already starting to see that we can start to live longer. You might get to a point where you could choose how long you want to live. We're definitely approaching escape velocity on aging, meaning for every year we live, we could live. I think right now, every year you live 0.5 years or 0.4 years or something like that. But eventually that's going to be every year you live, you can live another year. And it's like escape velocity for aging. I think we're heading towards that. Kids that are born today will live to be 100 years old on average because of technology and our biology. We're going to be able to change things. It's a slippery slope. Like, do we really want to design humans? I don't think so. We need that sense of serendipity. But these are going to be things that we're challenged with because it's already happening today. CRISPR, things like that. It's allowing us to start to make changes in the genome where you could, if you wanted to, remove cancer from someone's line. I have an employee that worked for me whose wife had breast cancer, and her mother had breast cancer, and her grandmother had breast cancer, and they had a child, a girl. They knew she was going to get breast cancer. So if you could remove that from their genome, would you do it? And the answer is yes, you would. But where do you stop? I want a kid with bigger muscles, blue eyes. Where do you stop? So these are the kinds of questions we're going to have to answer. With AI is going to make all those things happen faster. CRISPR is not an AI technology, but AI is the way that we're going to get to that analysis and the answers faster. AI is an accelerator of everything it touches. It accelerates everything it touches. So whether it's biology or finance or whatever it's touching, it's going to accelerate. So it's the apex technology that affects every other technology.
Makes
So
sense.
that's a
Great
question I
stuff
could
to
go
look
on for
forward.
20 minutes on, but I'll stop there.
That's fine. That's fine. It's an exciting topic, but I
Yeah.
guess I'm pretty sure great stuff to look forward for the upcoming decade. Kind of something that I wanted to end on a little bit is also get some predictions from you on, say, like I wanted this podcast to be something that kind of young professionals can look at and kind of just find inspiration in going diving into new topics. It could be 5G, IoT, artificial intelligence, or it could be AR, VR, blockchain. So many different things. What are some predictions that you can make about the next generation of startups, and what can people like me, what technologies can people like me look at or just like take courses in, just to kind of familiarize ourselves with, so that we can
Mhm.
kind of get better at it?
I'll say this, and I don't mean this as an insult to any university. I do think don't go into college thinking that you're going to learn everything you need to know in college. Um, Knowledge doesn't just exist there, right?
Hmm.
College is an opportunity for you to take, uh, to experiment, grow, collaborate, do all those things. But most knowledge exists outside of those walls. So if I'm going to tell you anything, it's don't limit yourself, don't limit your learning to what you're learning in school. Get out there, find things, take courses, Coursera, whatever it is, learn about things that you don't have courses on in college. Become a persistent, passionate learner on topics that you're excited about. And don't worry about what the topic is. Don't let anyone tell you that you have to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or this. Don't let anyone tell you that. Find something you're really passionate about and learn as much as you can about it, how you can help other people with that topic, and you'll create a life, a very, very good life. But if I'm kind of back up a little bit and talk about it, there are technologies that are going to change the world. If we start to kind of look at these emerging technologies, it's some of the ones you talked about. AI is at the very top, but IoT, so sensors. It's the work of my current company. How can we start to create a world where the environments themselves are smart? So if I have sensors on everything and I have an AI looking at sensors, how can I create environments that actually start to automate things? So like when I wake up in the morning, how cool would it be if your house was so automated that you wake up in the morning and it kind of your AI looks at your calendar and notices that you have an 8:30 meeting, so it starts the coffee pot at 8 o'clock and your coffee's ready at 8. Then it notices that you have a offsite meeting at 9 o'clock, so it brings the car around to the front of the house, and then you hop in and it takes you there. It notices your wife needs to go somewhere else, so it goes back to pick her up. And like your world becomes more automated, more automagical, if you will. And so that's kind of the promise of AI and technology. But I think the big change is going to happen in this concept we call convergence. When dramatic change happens, it's when these emerging exponential technologies like IoT and AI and blockchain and additive printing and things like that, when the world really changes is when two or more of those exponential technologies collide, right? When AI
Hmm.
collides with bioengineering, when AI collides with nanotechnology, right? That's where things get really interesting, and that's where the world is going to change, So I would encourage students to kind of look at those and just go Google exponential technologies, right? Emerging technologies, exponential technologies. You know what they are, but
Hmm.
just look at them and start to understand how there's two things, right? An exponential, an exponential technology, or let's call it a disruptive technology, is not disruptive in and of itself. It's only disruptive when it solves a critical problem.
Hmm.
So as a student, you want to kind of look at how are these technologies going to combine and converge together to solve the world's problem? How will we solve poverty? How will we solve hunger? How will we solve the water shortage? How will we solve all of these problems, the world's problems, with these emerging technologies? And the answer is we can solve all of them. It just takes people putting the mind power and the time to figuring it out. We have the potential to have a world that's absolutely fantastic. It doesn't have where people aren't, there's no poverty, there's no hunger,
Mm-hmm.
there's no pandemic diseases. We have the potential to create a world where all those things are true and happening. We just have to get people working on those problems. So, I think if I was in school, I'd start to look at like, what's a big problem that I would want to give my life to, like that I would love to solve or work with other people on. And then I start to look at what are the technologies that could create an unfair advantage to solve that problem, or what 2 technologies or 3 technologies could combine together, converge together to create, an incredible solution to that problem. And that's kind of exciting. I think that's where I'd look, is to in those areas. We haven't talked about quantum computing yet, but that's another what's next. I don't think it's going to happen quite as fast as other people think it will, but when it does, it's another one of those change the world moments. Like the world will never be the same again because of quantum.
Mm-hmm. Makes so much sense.
A lot to look forward to.
A lot to look forward to, and very exciting, honestly. And once again, like, I wanted to thank you so much for taking time out of your day and answering all these questions. And you've been a great inspiration in my life. And I wanted to kind of ask you all these questions so that others like me can also be inspired by your story, and also a lot of opportunities that are coming our way.
Well, again, it's been a privilege to meet you and to know you, and I'm glad you reached out that day. And I stand for your greatness.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll say the same. And then I think we have any other questions in the end. One last thing I want to end with. This is just like something random. Anything that you want to say, you can just be like, "Hey, young people, I want to tell you this." Just it doesn't have to be related to anything. It can be anything that you want to say.
Well, I think this is a really interesting time, and if I'm to speak to young people around the world right now, what I would tell them is to engage in changing the world. We have a lot of old people in politics, and we have a lot of old people making laws and rules and things like that. And it's time for your generation to step in and start to create the world, create a better world. So that we need a world where racial equality is the norm, where it doesn't matter. The color of your skin doesn't matter. All that matters is the content of your character. And so I would encourage everyone to take a stand for racial equality and diversity. The best companies are the ones that are diverse. The more diverse, the better the company. You can't say why, but when different religions and different ways of thinking come into any problem, it causes different thinking. And it's way better than having a lot of people that look the same and sound the same trying to solve problems. It just doesn't work as well. So I'm a huge believer in diversity, but create the world to look the way you want it to look, because quite frankly, it needs to change. And I think, like we talked about before, how COVID has created some opportunities that may not have happened otherwise. I think this is one of them. This is the time when the young people can take the torch and can start to create the world the way it should be, not the way that people. And I'm not saying old people suck. I'm closer to that than I am to young people, but I mean, in terms of age, but in terms of mindset, I identify much more with young people. And but it's your chance to change the world. Everyone's listening, and it's okay to think differently. It's okay to try things that no one's tried before. It's okay to fail and just pick yourself up and try again. It's okay. And create your picture of the world and bring it to the world. Let's this is your opportunity. Don't wait. Now is the time.
Makes sense. All right. Thank you so much once again. And I found this very, very helpful. And, I look forward to kind of talking to you more about these things.
Thanks, Aditya. I appreciate you inviting me to do this, and I hope people found it valuable.